Good morning. I'm Dr. Christina Kishimoto, and I am the CEO of Voice for Equity. And welcome to the May 2025 edition of the Stories We Must Tell. We know we have great stories nationally of women leading in some incredible ways. And I am so excited because I have someone with me today who has led from Memphis to Minneapolis to Boston and now to Milwaukee. So, welcome, Dr. Brenda Cassellius.
Thank you, Christina. It's so great to see my old friend.
It's great to be with you, Brenda. And this is a Saturday morning, right? This is like the best way to kind of chat and talk about what you're up to, what's happening, and how you're thinking about the work ahead of you. And it's been so much fun watching your career path and being friends with you. And we did some work together recently, presented on AI. I mean, how much fun is that, right? The way that we connect across the nation with one another.
It really is. And that women need to be connecting with one another, women leaders. And I think that you offer a really great platform. And I'm just so proud of you for starting Voices for Equity.
Well, Brenda, I'm excited and proud of you for jumping into the superintendency again. But before we talk about what you're currently doing, I want to go back because I love part of your origin story when you talk about your mom and growing up in public housing. And I wonder if you can share with us a little bit about what that has meant for how you lead today and how you work with young people and children that grow up in public housing as well.
Well, I have a really storied past. I was born to my parents. My mom had already had my sister when she was 16, so she was a really young mother. And she was from a Lebanese family of 11 children. And my dad was from Tallahassee, Florida, from a very educated African American family. Both of his parents were professors at Florida A&M, and actually, my grandfather, Melvin Alston, was the president of the Negro Teachers Union in Norfolk, Virginia, in 1939, and fought for Black teachers to get the same pay as white teachers, and had at the NAACP work on his case, and Thurgood Marshall was his friend and lawyer. So that legacy kind of drove me to education, I believe, even though my dad was not living with us for most of our lives. He was still a big part of who I became. But my parents met when my dad got a free ride scholarship to Minnesota, University of Minnesota, to play for the football for the University of Minnesota Gophers. And, quite honestly, it was before loving. And, my parents were not allowed to be together and my father to be able to stay on the football team. So he enlisted in the Vietnam War, and they went over to Japan, and I was born on the way there in Syracuse, New York. And then soon after that, they were very, very young. They were divorced, and I ended up in public housing with my mother as a single mom for most of my childhood. My dad did return back to the home when a small, brief part when I was in middle school, but then we were back in public housing again. But, kind of that back and forth that some of our kids have, it just really was formative to me as a child. And uh, I had great opportunities though for people who paid it forward for me. And I had that example. And I watched that as I was a young child, the different opportunities that I had. And, that really imprinted on who I was and what my character was and who I wanted to become and how I wanted to pay it forward for other children. So that's what's driven me and my purpose. And I've never looked back, and I don't think there's a more worthy career than working on behalf of children and families.
Thank you for sharing that story because I think that there's nothing more powerful than when we share our stories and whether it's peers, other women leading in this role or wanting to lead as a superintendent, or it's the students, whose lives, cross our paths and we cross their paths and we impact with our stories. And so I thank you for sharing that. I would love to hear whether or not, in addition to the impact your family and your history has had, whether there has been a woman or a person that really impacted you during your career trajectory across superintendencies.
Well, certainly there have been many women who have opened doors for me, and I'm just so grateful for the many, many women. But there's been one particular woman who made a huge difference for me, and that's Dr. Carol Johnson. And I know that many of your listeners and folks who come to your conferences know Dr. Johnson just has been an incredible superintendent. She's retired now, and leader within our cohort of women superintendents. She was in Minneapolis, she was in Memphis, and she was in Boston. So I was in many of the places that she was, and she really helped craft who I am and taught me about humility, taught me about leadership, taught me that my ideas weren't always the best ideas at the table. One really great lesson she said is anytime you meet with somebody on any kind of endeavor you're going to do, make sure that you have the person who's actually going to have to do the work at the table with you. And so this just a number of really great lessons that I learned for her, and she opened up the doors for me, and I'm immensely grateful. Just talked to her the other day, and she's still mentoring me to this day.
That's fantastic. So now that you are this highly experienced superintendent, you have had both the local and state perspective, and now you're back at a school district. What would you tell your 25-year-old teacher self about what's ahead and how to take perspective, right, in that time period when you were 25?
Well, when I was 25, I was still teaching, and but I was eager to move into a leadership role because I felt like I wasn't, um, you know, fully getting all of the support that I believe teachers needed. And you just kind of get thrown into a classroom when you're a teacher, particularly because I had such good classroom management skills. I'd always get the naughtiest kids, which was great. And I still really, that's where my heart and passion is with our most vulnerable students and those who are least resourced. So, I have an expertise in that area. And I think, what I would tell my 25-year-old self is to continue to go after where you think your best fit is and where your purpose is, regardless of how hard it might seem or how many doors might shut. I looked really, really young when I was 25. Basically, I looked young until I was probably 45. I kept getting carded, and people would always say, "You look too young for the position," because, there wasn't the Me Too movement back there. There wasn't initiatives for women back when I was younger. And I was an African American, young looking woman who really didn't look the part of a high school principal or associate superintendent at that time. But I had the skills and the knowledge to be able to do that. And I think, I would tell myself, be patient, your time will come, and continue to do the good work that you are capable of doing, and you know build those connections that you need. Listen to the mentors and do the things that they say to do. I think when I was about 35, I think I thought I knew everything. And Carol Johnson would say, Brenda, when you get to be my age, you're going to realize you don't know anything, and, I heeded that advice. I tried to learn everything I could. I read a ton of books on leadership, and really in like leadership that's not just instructional leadership,
Mhm.
because sometimes we focus on instructional leadership, right? Because that's what's right before us. But we have to learn how to lead other adults. We have to learn how to manage through healthy conflict. We have to learn how to build political will. All of that comes in years of experience, and knowing. And I think that that's what I have now that I didn't have when I was 25, 35, even 45 when I was commissioner, and still learning that position. So I would say be patient with yourself, listen to those who have come before you, and take every opportunity that you can to learn, grow, and move into that next opportunity.
That's wise advice, both that Carol gave to you and that now you're giving to others. Now you've had, context and complexity is something that you certainly speak about in your various leadership roles. As women move across leadership positions at a localized level, like a district or school principalship, to a position like the state level where you served as commissioner and then now going back to the district level, what are the things or what is something that you found scales well, right? It cuts across levels. And what hasn't scaled well, where you say, okay, this is really about state leadership and it's very different than district leadership. What scales, what doesn't scale?
So, I've been everything from a paraprofessional in a special ed classroom to a teacher, to a school leader, to an associate superintendent, and state commissioner. And so I've done that at all levels. And I think one thing that scales really well is finding those connections with civic leadership, government, philanthropy, and business. So finding those connections, even when you're a teacher, you have business partners in your classroom. When you're a principal, you might be going to the Rotary and connecting with a number of different community partners within your community. Or when you're a superintendent, you might be looking at more government supports with the state coming in and supporting you with school improvement, et cetera. So it's at every single level that you're looking for those opportunities to build and braid partnerships in order to move the agenda and to provide opportunity for children and families. I think another thing is that you'll rarely hear me talk about just children. I talk about children and families because I think that also scales. I think that across all levels, you have to be focused on families and stabilizing families because when you do, children succeed. So I think that is absolutely something that scales. And then things that don't scale, I don't know that there's much that doesn't scale when you look for those opportunities. Um, yeah, I can't think of anything that you can't find opportunity in to scale at all of those different levels. And particularly policy. I think that's the most underlooked skill set. And I think that's what you and I bring, Christina, when we go back into a superintendency, because we've been state commissioners at the highest level, both at the state level and also participating and collaborating with other state chiefs on federal policy. That knowledge on how to use policy to drive expectations and drive change and to build political will around systemic, especially large systemic change, is, I think, one of the most powerful tools in a superintendent's toolkit. And if they don't know how to manage the politics and to change management and to build the kind of policy that needs to be in place at all those different levels, I don't think it's harder for the superintendent to be successful.
Absolutely. And policy and politics are, a part of the role, right? We have to do that work. We have to do that work well. We also need to know how to manage that as, you have shown at different levels, manage it for good because you can also manage, right, and manipulate policy and politics in a way that doesn't allow for the equity that we want to see in terms of how kids have opportunities. And so let's talk a little bit about that jump from Minnesota to Boston and what that meant for you in terms of what you were trying to accomplish in Boston, going back to a district level and then hitting up against the pandemic. What did that mean in terms of being able to manage both a vision for the policy work that needed to happen on behalf of kids and community and having to manage a crisis?
Yeah, it was really so disappointing because I had mayoral control in Boston and I had the mayor specifically recruit me for that job. And we got along so well. And I asked him for $100 million to enact a vision for a quality guarantee across all our schools, which I got.
You were successful in that. It was a
Oh,
great accomplishment.
so excited to get that amount of money infused with our toughest schools. I was sure we were going to make Boston a model. Particularly, we had 35 universities, around, and we were building political will, and everybody was excited. 2 weeks later, we get the pandemic. It was just crazy. And anyone who's listening and is an educator and went through that knows that we probably all still have a little PTSD from. You know,
Yes, we do.
it's hard. It was hard. It literally was hard. And so all of that went on the shelf. So then I had to think very critically at that moment, what is it that are the big chunks that I want to get accomplished and that I can still push even in this other kind of chaos environment of trying to manage a health crisis. And that was a really strategic decision that I made in order to start continuing on with some of our grade configuration changes because we needed that academic focus. Um, Looking at exam school and breaking down some of the, kind of historical tracking of students and, different opportunities for kids across the city and what they were getting and not getting, and implementing this quality guarantee, even though we were managing, remote learning at the time, and knowing that that wasn't even close to the high quality opportunities that we needed to give our kids. We pushed for libraries in every single school. We passed a $5 billion, or excuse me, a $2 billion bond for renovating and greening our schools. And I did that. I had three mayors and three board chairs in 3 years.
Wow.
Um, and it's mayoral control. So, it was a very tumultuous, challenging time to lead through all of that leadership shuffle that was happening both at the school committee level and also at the city level during that time. But we got a lot done. I'm very proud of what we got done. But when Mayor Wu came into her mayorship, and I had a great relationship with Mayor Wu, I was just genuinely tired and exhausted from those 3 years. And I think politically, she also needed to make a different change, to be honest, because of the exam school decisions that I had made politically. So I knew when I started on the exam school policy route that my time in Boston would be limited.
So you've had this incredible experience. You've had these successes. You've managed what are really difficult challenges, right? And conflicts in public ed, right? These tensions. Now you've started as a superintendent in Milwaukee. And so, what does that look like in the first, what is it, 2 months or so that you've been there, in terms of the perspective you bring with this wealth of experience and the way you're looking at what's ahead of you and how you want to lead?
Well, I've got to say, it's been a bit triggering. COVID all over again. So I walked into a lead crisis here in our schools. I also walked into when the court had ordered SROs back in our buildings, police back in our buildings. The governor had just issued a scathing audit on the school district and the operations. Almost every cabinet position is filled currently with an interim position and having to be completely built back. The state was pressing on deadlines that the district was missing in terms of the finance and the books and their audit. And so there was just crisis after crisis after crisis. Literally on the first day that I was there, they were putting SROs, and then within a week we were closing schools to lead. So it has been 30 days of what was supposed to be a transition that was supposed to be just forward looking and building my team and getting out and meeting the community, has really turned into a full-fledged superintendency of managing through crisis and trying to do so with still building community support and will and trust, and trying to bring about transparency in the district where they were criticized before. So, and then now, just this past week, 3 new board members were brought on and a new board chair. So, it is a lot of change in just 30 days. But, I'm glad that I have kind of the experience to say, this will pass and we will be able to get to our agenda. I'm beginning my listening tours in 2 weeks with the community. And I've actually been out already meeting with so many community members. You know how these jobs are, they're
Yeah.
like 12-hour days when you first start. to try to do that, school visits. But there is a lot of other things outside of all of this kind of urgent matter. Every day I get the opportunity to see the brilliance of our kids, right? So last night I'm at the Wiz that our high school of the arts is doing, and it's just this brilliant, beautiful production. 2 weeks before I was at Hairspray. I've been able to go and see just the wonderful teachers in our school buildings and say hello to them and listen to them and what they need. So there's a lot of promise in this district, and I'm really, really excited to let everybody else see that, because you know how it is with large urban systems. You get so much negative and people only focus on the negative, but truly there's dedicated professionals in our classrooms, in the principalship, in central office, doing this amazing work each and every day. And they need to be highlighted too. So I hope to peel back those layers and lift the cloud and bring the joy, and be able to put in place the vision that I had for Boston right here in Milwaukee, because I think it's a vision that's good for every urban district, which is have high quality schools in every single neighborhood and be the first choice for families.
Well, Brenda, it's inspiring to watch your career path, and it's exciting to see you step into a role like this, knowing that you will stabilize and advance, and you bring tremendous vision to your work and inspiration and hope, and that's what makes you a great leader. And so, I encourage women to watch your leadership over the next few years. And so, what I want to do is just do a real quick lightning round, kind of your response to a few questions very quickly, and kind of get your reaction to a few things.
And maybe before we do that, maybe
Sure.
they don't just watch, but we have openings on the HYA website. I'll use this as a quick little promo. Come and work in Milwaukee, come and work with me. And I am one who wants to build up the next leadership of folks and see them grow into their positions and reach their dreams. Even if people stay for 2 years, I think that they'll gain a lot from working in this type of environment. And also, I'll take them under my wing. So I hope that people will consider coming to Milwaukee and applying for some of the cabinet positions.
I'm glad you're saying that, because I'm a big proponent of choose the person that you're working with or the people you're working with. Uh, Everyone doesn't have to have all the answers, right? Like, I know in leadership, when I'm looking for my team, I'm looking for those who are open and innovative and want to do the work and love the students and love community and love teachers, right? That bring that joy of innovation and learning and working together. And that's the way you lead. And so I encourage people to reach out, certainly, and look at these great positions that are open there to be part of a fantastic team with a fantastic leader.
Oh, thank you.
So I would love to ask you just a couple of really quick questions here. We're going to do this kind of lightning round, like 5 questions in 1 minute, so let's start with one leadership myth that women still hear today that you'd like to just retire.
Well, I think the one is that we're emotional. And that, they get pinned on if you cry or if you're emotional, that, somehow you're not strong. No, I think that crying and being emotional is like part of the work, and if you're not crying and you see some of these miserable conditions that children have, then something's wrong with you. A big cry is good for you.
A morning ritual that centers you.
I work out at F45 training, and I can't tell you how much a part of my life is. When I moved to Milwaukee, I moved just one block from the F45 training, so I had no excuse not to go.
A song that uplifts you instantly.
Oh my gosh, I don't know artists that well, but
What type of music?
any soulful song, gospel music can lift you up just like quickly. So any kind of gospel music.
A wellness routine that you splurge, but it's less than $20.
I like to buy myself a nice candle or a nice lotion that I can just put on and just smell it. I love beautiful smells. And so occasionally I will just buy a nice candle or a nice soap. Um,
That's great. A one-word mantra you have for yourself for 2025.
This too shall pass.
A little more than one word, but a phrase that I appreciate. So, everyone, Dr. Brenda Cassellius, an amazing leader now in Milwaukee Public Schools, inviting you to come join her team if you have a passion for building and respectfully working with community, loving on students, a great leader to work with. And I thank you, Brenda, for spending some time with me this Saturday morning, sharing your story, but also just having time to chat with you.
Yeah, it was great to talk with you again, too, Christina. I'm just so proud of you and all that you're doing to raise the voices of women and to give them the tools that they need to succeed. And just count me in as a terrific partner with you.
You always have been. And so I want to remind our listeners that we have the When Women Lead 2025 conference in Charleston, South Carolina from June 23rd to June 25th. Register, join us, meet with great leaders who will be there sharing their practices, and really excited once again to be able to feature a great superintendent who's serving nationally, who knows how to network, and is just salt of the earth with her heart. So thank you, Brenda, for being here. Love you, girl.
Love you too. Talk to you later, sis.